Hi, it's Kirby Summers, and today is Sunday, June 23rd. The reason for this back-to-back podcast I'm just going to say the letter E, Musk, with his, what I need to say, a secret friendship with J.E., and I know you're all following me. The article that I wrote for my Substack has been really well received. As I said in my previous podcast, I received a lot of interruptions electronically as I was trying to upload that. And so I had to publish it yesterday morning as opposed to this morning, which is typically when I drop the article. But also the comments and the insights that people have taken away that were not visible before doing like a deep dive, showing receipts, information that has not been seen before by anyone doing any of the Epstein connected research, has been has received a really good understanding by people who have followed me for a very long time, including those of you who decided to join me at the last minute and read that. And now I see that some of you are reading a lot of my other work, but I also noticed that some of you have been sitting on the sidelines and you jumped in for that one, and for the one I did, I believe a week ago, on Bill Gates and the Gate connection to serial murderers and how that's connected to a much larger psyop that we have been subjected to. What I thought I would do is, well, I can't share, the article clearly. I'll share a couple of the things I included, and the response that was noticed by long-term followers of my work who have also been digging into this seemingly multi-generational and misrepresented crime that does not revolve necessarily around Epstein, but involves many people, that once you sort of see something, such as, for example, a very well-known actress made famous by Harvey Weinstein, who I included in the article for various reasons, and the way that she's posed by a photographer whose name and who is being promoted in order to obscure someone else connected to this so-called, let's call it for the sake of simplicity today, the Epstein ring, because that's what happens. I'm going to just interrupt here and say that blurring in the intelligence community is done intentionally to the populace, so that, for example, using the TV show Friends, we have the name Rachel, we have the name of the character. I'm going to try to be a little bit vague in some cases, okay? We have the name of the person that Matthew portrayed, Chandler. We have another name connected to that, Bing, which, as I have written many times before, is connected to Gates, who created a search engine, and then suddenly, after Epstein's arrest, Bing decided to throw himself off the 22nd floor window of his Century City apartment in Los Angeles. I hope you guys are keeping up, because as we know, this has very many, I hate to use the word tentacles, but that's probably the best descriptor. And by the way, if I have not requested that you like this podcast, give it a like. Don't forget, it's important. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, do so now. And if you're not following me on my two platforms, Patreon and Substack, do it, because that's really where I can share what I spend day after day exploring. And by the way, I've been looking at this for 30 years. That's how long I have been looking for answers to what I initially believed was only a problem that I had, having been an slave to one of these twisted billionaires. Again, I'm being kind with my choice of words. I thought I was the only one. And so, but then, clearly after Ronan Farrow wrote the article on Harvey Weinstein and quote the army of spies, I was like, oh, there are other people, other women have this problem. And then when the Epstein story kind of surfaced, I'm like, oh, okay. They're not just the children that I had learned about via the Franklin scandal, which again is connected to my story, but there are children, boys, girls, women, and men that this has happened to. It's not just me. And then, of course, it tied into a letter I received from someone in the CIA, in the nuclear department, who kind of stayed in touch with me. And at the time, I didn't understand what his purpose in my life was. That was 2008. So at the same time that Jeffrey Epstein was sent to jail, I was contacted by someone in the CIA, again in the nuclear division. And he stayed in my life for a while, but he contacted me under the false statement that he wanted to know if I knew if some of the Rickless bonds were still good, because his father had just died, and he, had been reading a blog I was keeping at the time, because I was terrified for my safety. I'd already had, I believe by that point, at least 2 attacks, where, the first I was held hostage, and at knife point, I managed to escape on the 5th day. And the second, something else happened that I'm going to keep private, because I don't know that I necessarily want to share all of the ones that have happened to me on this platform. And so I didn't understand that until Epstein was arrested, and a little bit before, when the Harvey thing, because I had known about, let's say, one of the Mossad assets connected to the Epstein story that people have been talking about. And at the time, I had reached out to Ronan Farrow, and I believe we had a brief exchange. So anyway, all of the information that I sort of thought were these, like, all of the things that I had remembered from my own experience, all of the things that I learned in my research, and all of that has come into place for me. I can see things a little bit clearer. And so to get back to the actress that was made famous by Harvey Weinstein, who, as you know, was very close with Epstein and his fake girlfriend, Ghislaine Maxwell, was photographed by a photographer whose name is an interesting choice. And he is being propped up in order to erase, because that is what blurring is. You erase the search results of a specific person. As with the Friends thing, it erased the name of Rachel Chandler to, at this point, I think almost 99.9%. And in this case, the way that she was posed, her pose and the placement of her feet were an identical representation of Baphomet. Identical. And so that did not go without being noticed in the article that I uploaded regarding E.M.'s much closer friendship. He was not photobombed, by the way, as he said. One of my followers wrote, "Oh my God, in this photo, she looks like she has hooves." Yeah. And she was absolutely right. And that was why I selected that photo of his work. And it was picked up by other people. And then one of my favorite, well, you know what? I have a lot of favorite people, but Professor Hamamoto clearly ranks up there. He said about her that, and I'm not going to name her here, that she appears to be one of the let's call it the letter, it's a liquid and it's in our bodies and it starts with a B and it ends with a D. And then he wrote cultist. So we know that it has, you know, that red liquid that's in our bodies. And he's like, and that it is part of the world of cannibalism. And he goes on to talk about a Nobel Prize winner who was involved in this sort of work, and who was also a notorious P word. Now, I'm going to keep those names unsaid on this platform for, you know, safety reasons. He evaded apparently any punishment because he fled the United States. However, my response to him, and that was Professor Hamamoto's comment, he's always so astute. He gets almost every word I write, he gets it. And so I was like, it's interesting because regarding a certain family that I'm zeroing in on, yeah, cannibalism comes into the foray, let's say. And I will be writing about this family and how they are connected to that word and that very ancient practice. Because we have to understand that these practices are not like something that, oh, it's new, you know, we're going to suddenly do something that's, it comes from ancient practices that are steeped in what I'm going to call dark magic. And you can rephrase that word. And then, you know, I got a lot of props on this, as I do with a lot of my work, which I love. And, you know, someone said, "Brilliant, Kirby, again. Thanks for showing us how to spot their patterns of behavior. It's revelatory. You're like a truth serum." And then I wrote, you know, "Thank you. I'll put the 'you're like a truth serum' comment in my Go Leaf box where I stash my favorite sayings." And so then, you know, there was a certain actor that I mentioned as it pertains to the story that Vicky Ward told about why Epstein was not, the article on Epstein in 2003, why the Farmer sisters were not included. And so she has said several different things. And Grayton Carter, by the way, has also said several different things. So 2 years ago, I had done a deep dive which prompted Vicky Ward to come and to become a member of my Substack. And she couldn't dispute what I had written, because I had written this with factual evidence that I had taken screenshots of regarding things she said long before Jeffrey Epstein's arrest on July 6, 2019. And we're not talking about the comment where she was talking about Ghislaine Maxwell. What I'm talking about here is who was really responsible for not including the Farmer sisters in the 2003 article. So I exposed that person also in this article regarding EM, because it's relevant. These people, there are no 6 degrees of separation here. We're talking about 1 degree. These people are very, very tight. They all know each other, and all of them have lied. They've all lied, but they're all part of the same world that we have been discovering. Now, the actor that I named, one of my other favorite followers, I love her to pieces, and I always look forward to what she has to say, said that she had seen the movie that I cited, and that he is a good actor, but he didn't cut it in the role of a bad guy, because in this movie that I cited, he plays the role of a really nasty guy. And so I responded that I liked him too. And I then explained to her that he's one of them, and I gave her just one example. Well, I gave her 2 examples. Number one, he had done movies with Arnon Milchan, who outed himself as a Mossad spy a long time ago. And then the second example that I gave her is that he worked with the Hollywood CIA machinery during the Reagan administration by portraying a naval officer during the time that Ronald Reagan wanted to beef up the Navy. So if you guys have been around long enough to remember the 1980s, you will probably, maybe you notice that there were a lot of movies that centered around a naval officer. And the reason for that was because it was a psyop, so that the Navy could have more people become part of it, because that's what Ronald Reagan wanted. We have to also remember that Reagan's start was as an actor, which is why he was perfectly cast as the president of the United States, with his vice president being George H.W. Bush. The fact of EM and his history that is very obscured, because you can't even go on X and find even breaking stories on him. If they're not positive, they're not there. So you have to sort of be very creative and try to get around that, because it's really very censored, more so than it had been even before his arrival. So there were some similarities between his background and a person in Epstein's circle who has been recently sued, and I have talked about that briefly on this platform. And that, frankly, their connection is a little bit more tighter, let's say, than will ever be revealed by anybody. Certainly you're not going to hear this in your evening news on whatever platform you listen to. And so someone wrote that what surprised her was Graydon Carter's role in all of this. And then in my article, because it was about EM, I explained what Carter's role in EM's life was, with receipts. and that she was surprised about EM and Grayton Carter and all of that. And I know that most people have taken Carter at his word and on surface level stuff. But Carter is an interesting rabbit hole all to himself. He provided about 3 or 4 different reasons as to why he didn't include the Farmer Sisters. But as I wrote 2 years ago, which prompted again Vicky Ward to become a subscriber to my Substack, he too very likely was lying about all of this, because there was another person that I wrote a very long series on, who in fact was the real reason that that story was suppressed. Let's see if there's anything else I can share with you here about this article, which, you know, I titled it Birds of a Feather and Definitely Friends, but really it should probably be titled Inside the Secret Friendship of EM and JE. And so it's you know, I began with sharing some of the things that some people may have known regarding the Edge Foundation and the fact that Epstein was the one to really fund those legendary dinners. And then, you know, one person was very astute in saying, well, it's interesting how not much has been written about John Brockman, who created the Edge Foundation. But I explained to her that I had included Brockman in my deep dive on so many deep dives and so many sort of like short, you know, they could be books on their own. I just choose not to make them books at this time, but I did a deep dive on someone who belongs in that world and somehow started to talk. Okay, I'm going to just say it, Eric Weinstein. So I wrote a long time ago several articles. It's a series, it's not finished, about why he is not what he pretends to be. And so in my expose on him, I did write about John Brockman, and I expanded that into, you know, the broader field where it belongs. And I don't know if you guys know, but Musk is a member. All right. So I hope that you guys have been able to read between the lines here with the things that I have not said out loud. And again, you know, I invite you to come on over to my Substack. One thing I want to make clear, I do not share the same things on my 2 platforms. I have my Patreon and I have my Substack, and of course I have Twitter, X, let's call it, and I have my account here. And all of these, while they cross-reference each other, I do not put the same thing that I put on Substack on my Patreon, and I do not put what I put on my Patreon on my Substack. It's always different material, relevant material, but it's not the same. And I know I've had repeated requests by someone, people who follow me on one or the other, to share what I've shared on the other. And I just can't do that because it just would be unfair to the people who are in that special platform. Now, what I will say is that some people follow me on all my platforms, which I appreciate. I do know that not everyone can afford to do that, which is why I come here. I come here because I'm very limited on X. I come here and I say as much as I possibly can say, you know, and I do what I can, but I can't share the same thing on different platforms, because it just, that would defeat the purpose, frankly, of having different platforms. I do want to thank all of you who are following my work, those of you who take the time to like it. I know that it sounds like it's not a big deal, but it is a big deal. And, when you leave a comment, I do read the comments. I don't always have the ability or the time to reply to everything because I've got a gazillion things to do 7 days a week. I'm always researching. And if I've not gotten back to you and you sent me a private message or something like that, eventually I will get around to responding. It's just that it takes me a while to go through all of the stuff that's in my inbox or in my DMs or waiting. What I do try to do, though, for people on my Substack is I try to engage rather quickly because it keeps the conversation going. I am the one that writes the articles. I'm the one that does the research. And when people have a question or a comment about something, I like to immediately respond because it keeps the thread alive. Anyway, guys, I hope that this has shed some light on my article that I uploaded yesterday due to technical difficulties. And I hope you guys are having a really good weekend. Thanks again. Bye.